Well, what I meant by regulatory reform is going up and down the campaign trail. I have been listening to many voters, unlike my opponent who said to Politico he never hears people complain about the tax burden. That's a quote in Politico. I have heard people complain about the tax burden. And I've heard senior citizens, low income, who are not taking advantage of the system, but who are concerned about their utility bills going up, and specifically about regulatory reform. I've talked to farmers who want to put in solar panels or some sort of alternative energy source that would make them independent. However, our federal regulations then require that these farms, because of how much energy they produce, will then be taxed at the same rate as a utility company. Now, the purpose of moving towards, is that one that I have, I'm done? Basically, it's on how much energy they produce as opposed to whether or not they sell it, and that prohibits them from exploring alternative energy sources and investing into their own farms.
Thank you very much. Mr. Coons, 1 minute to you.
Mark, Delaware sits in a place in the United States where we are on the receiving end of a lot of air pollution generated across the rest of the country. And I believe it has real, measurable, demonstrated impacts on infant health, on the health of many Delaware citizens. I think it is partly at cause for our unduly high cancer rate, and it's something that Senator Carper has made a real effort at over the last decade to advocate effectively for stronger and tougher air quality regulations that will protect not just Delaware, but all the people of the United States. There are lots of emissions that come out of coal-fired power plants and other power sources. There's lots of emissions that come out of lightly regulated small things like lawnmowers and gas-powered motors that I think we could do a better and stronger job of setting environmental targets, helping move towards them over the longer term, and ensuring that we protect the health of our citizens.
Would anybody like to add anything further on this topic? We can squeeze in one more question. Tamala Edwards came an awful long way to be here this morning. Go ahead, Tamala, why don't you?
All right. As you know, your state is made up of citizens from so many different kinds of racial, religious, ethnic backgrounds, and that's where this question comes from. One of our allies, Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, made big news this weekend by saying that multiculturalism, in her words, had utterly failed, that all citizens there now need to speak German and hew to Christian values. Looking at Delaware and America, is multiculturalism something we should continue to honor and work to include in our public life, or not?
60 seconds to Mr. Coons.
Absolutely. Respecting the full range of the backgrounds that people have come from and are bringing to the table to participate in the American body politic is an important part of my values, of our tradition as a nation, and I think of where we're going to go moving forward. I think we need to, in our public schools, in our political debate, in our economy going forward, ensure that we give the greatest possible access to opportunity and the greatest possible opportunity to contribute to our public dialogue and to moving our community and our culture forward to folks no matter what their background or no matter what their, as you put it, race, religion, orientation, or educational experience. That way we will continue to be the beacon of opportunity that I deeply believe in and that we always have been and that we can and should be in the future.
Mr. Coons, thank you. And 60 seconds to you, Ms. O'Donnell.
Yes, I think multiculturalism is definitely something that we need to celebrate. Now, specifically on those remarks, where it would come into the powers of Congress or an issue that I may have to vote on as your next U.S. Senator, is that I would support English being the official language. I think that when it comes to multiculturalism, the best way to help people to truly take advantage of the fact that America is a beacon of freedom, hope, and justice, and I have never questioned that, is to help them assimilate, to help them get a job, and that can be seen through our education system if we teach them English. Yeah, I don't think that anyone would oppose whether multiculturalism is a bad thing. I don't think it is. I think that we truly are a melting pot, and that's what makes America great.
Mr. Coons, anything to add on this?
No, I think we've covered it. Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll probably be into the final question here. I'll just warn you, I may have to cut the dialogue short after the fact, but since we have the time, let's squeeze in one more question from WDEL's Alan Ludell.
Oh, I'm debating what to ask. Okay, healthcare. To what extent have either one of you had to pay out of pocket for your own health care, and how has that informed your view on health care? I don't know.
A great non-controversial topic. Thank you, Alan. I mean, my wife and I take advantage of the medical savings accounts, an important provision in current law and something that I hope we will continue to expand and defend, that allows us to use pre-tax dollars to pay for things that are not covered by our health insurance. With 3 young children, like many families, we face dental care costs or we face eye care costs that are not covered under current health insurance. And I do think we need to continue to provide vehicles for folks to save for and to finance and to provide for health care coverage or health-related costs that are not covered under either employer-provided insurance or as we move forward under the Affordable Care Act in broader coverage that's available. I think we have to be mindful of the fact that individuals have lots of different circumstances and lots of different challenges in paying for and providing health care. I think we can and should continue to move forward as a country in providing access to quality, affordable health care to as many Americans as is responsibly possible.
All right, I believe the final 60 seconds now will go to Ms. O'Donnell.
I pay for all of my medical costs out of pocket, and I support also the medical savings account. I'd like to point out that Obamacare, which my opponent is in full support of, severely jeopardizes medical savings accounts and businesses' ability to provide that benefit. So because I know what it's like to have to pay for medical expenses out of your own pocket, I have consistently said on the campaign trail that no one disputes whether or not we need health care reform, but somewhere along the course of public debate, we've begun to confuse coverage with care. And what Congress should be doing is addressing the things that make affordable health care accessible to even our most vulnerable in society. Under Obamacare, we were promised that health care costs would go down, but indeed they've gone up. We were promised that more people would have access to insurance, but according to the census, indeed more people are left without insurance. So that's why when it comes to health care, I'm proposing reform based on the private sector that allows the consumer to have the choice, whether it's to continue out-of-pocket costs with lower care because we've addressed...
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to be so abrupt with you there. But the clock rules, and it is 9:24 here at WDEL's Commute with the Candidates, and it's time now for our closing statements from the candidates. We had a coin toss you may have seen take place at the beginning of the debate, and Mr. Coons will go first. You have 2 minutes, Mr. Coons.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you to our panel, and thank you again to Widener Law School. Thank you to WDEL and to everyone who's made possible this debate today. It's great to be with you again here at Widener. And I appreciate your close attention to today's debate. Thank you to the panel for the tough questions you've asked and the open and good conversation we've had over the last 90 minutes. I think you've heard there is a clear and real difference between my opponent and me in our values, in our experience, and in our approach to how to get our country, our economy back on track. Ms. O'Donnell does have experience in running for office, but not in really running anything, at delivering great and catchy slogans, but not at delivering on real solutions. And in her decade in Washington, she has great experience at sharpening the partisan divide, but not at bridging it and finding real solutions. I think what Delaware needs and what Delaware deserves is a next United States Senator who has real, hands-on, practical experience solving real problems, fixing what's wrong, capable of tackling what's wrong in Washington and moving us forward here in Delaware and in our country. And I believe I offer you real and concrete ideas based on this experience. I am the only candidate on this stage today with experience working in the private sector and working with the private sector. And while we've discussed lots of important issues facing our nation going forward, it's clear to me that fixing the economy, helping small businesses create jobs is the most pressing concern facing our families, facing our country, and that's what I will be focused on as your next U.S. Senator. Ideas matter. I've taken the idea to develop them, to post them in full on the website, and to continue to talk about them day in and day out as a candidate for the last 9 months. I'm grateful for the members of the press who are holding my opponent accountable for the things that she said and for the misrepresentations she's made, and I have done my best and will continue to do my best to lay out positive, concrete, and specific ideas for how to move forward. What matters most is getting America back on track. I take seriously the idea this is a job interview, and I want to go to Washington to work for you, for Delaware. I'd be grateful for your vote on November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coons. 2 minutes to Ms. O'Donnell for her closing remarks.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. I do believe that there is a clear choice in this debate. As my opponent said, this is a job interview, and on a job interview, you're expected to answer all the questions. My opponent can't name the 5 freedoms guaranteed in the First Amendment. He wouldn't tell you whether or not that he thinks what we did in Afghanistan in the 80s was the right thing to do. When the pressure got hot, called for a lifeline. Is this what you want in your next U.S. Senator? I'm not a Democrat, but I know that what we see coming from this administration is not what my Democrat friends voted for when they voted for Hope and Change in 2008. And that's why we have numerous Democrats not only voting for me, but working on my team, because they don't want to see more of the same. My opponent is addicted to a culture of waste, fraud, and abuse, and that is seen in how he has run our county government, whether it's raising taxes on the most vulnerable in our society, saying that low-income seniors and low-income disabled are taking advantage of our system is just heartless. And then to run our county to a position where it's going to be bankrupt by 2014, we do not need more of the same. We do not need someone who's going to rubber stamp the failed policies coming from Washington. But I believe that we can get our country back on track. I believe that we can be strong again. I have never questioned whether America is a beacon of freedom and hope. And I will stand up to the party pressure in Washington, D.C., and put your interests ahead of Washington interests. So if you want someone with the experience to go to Washington and serve, to take the commitment to represent the interests of the people and not the special interests, then I'm asking for your vote. Because I believe what we need to do to get the economy back on track is to create policies that spur the economy through the private business. As I said, your next U.S. Senator will be voting on very important issues this November. The massive tax increases that are going to be coming this January, cap and trade that is immediately going to raise your utility bills by $1,200. In just 3 years alone, we're going to be paying $1 billion. It's time?
That's time, I'm afraid.
In interest alone on our national debt. It's got to stop.
Well, that concludes WDEL's Commute with the Candidates this morning, a debate between Delaware U.S. Senate candidates Christine O'Donnell and Chris Coons. How about a nice round of applause for our candidates this morning? Thank you so much. Also, we'd like to thank everyone for turning out here. A packed house today. That was great at the Widener University School of Law. Also to Widener staff, Dean Linda Ammons, Mary Allen, and the technical folks here who make sure that our equipment works, along with our engineers for this broadcast, Lee St. John and Dave Valet. Of course, we thank our panelists, Tamala Edwards from Channel 6, Mark Nardone from Delaware Today, Chad Livengood from the News Journal, and WDEL's Alan Ludell. Your questions help us learn more about these candidates and where they stand on the issues, and we thank you for that. Later today, you can see a podcast of this debate on our website, WDEL.com. Also video there as well. If you heard something this morning you want to discuss further, call our talk shows. Al Massetti, 9 till noon, Rick Jensen, 1 till 4, live and local. WDEL's Election Watch coverage brought to you by Shell Horn & Hill. Before it hits, get on top of winter with the reliability of Shell Horn & Hill. Call 658-5293. Do it today. That'll do it from here. I'm Peter MacArthur. The Al Massetti Show coming up next, 11:50 a.m. WDEL.